This episode sheds light on the concept of helping oneself before helping another. Discussed and explained to us in many ways for generations, the simplicity of the concept has still got people confused. Amidst the teachings of right manners, right etiquette, right morals, right teamwork, and more, the guidelines to self prioritization have been left to time. Some people struggle to make their choice known with the fear of judgment. Others find creating a balance between the two difficult. Our speakers today like to keep things simple, so here goes. We have one question this episode, and it is a two-parter. The question goes somewhat like this. By helping myself, I help you. Helping you helps me. Or, we are in this together, let's go with the flow. Which of the above thought processes do you most connect with? And what about you strengthens this belief? Which parts of your life have the other two concepts been useful for? If not, state why.
I think over the years, what I've learned is self care and self help is really, really important. The idea of putting yourself before others. Sometimes I think this is your upbringing, right? And it makes you believe that if you put yourself before others, you're somehow, feeling you're arrogant or self centered. But I think, in my opinion, it's the opposite. And it just means that you value your life as much as you value everyone else's life, and which is something that you have to do. And I think in most religious all these religious preachers and everything, and even the religious texts, I think to say that you need to put yourself first, but they also say you need to help the others. So I think this one should go hand in hand. I'll just give you an example. So when I was really young, I used to wonder what my purpose in life is. So I thought, maybe I should just help the less fortunate and make a difference to them somehow. Maybe building villages, rehabilitation centers, or anything, right? The less fortunate, whether it is monetary help or whether it is, just emotional support or whatever. And somehow being the martyr over there, it kind of made me feel like, oh yeah, I'm like really heroic, and yeah, I'm a very good person. It kind so that is what I started realizing, that when I started helping others, I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong not to help others, but somehow over the years I realized that I'm only doing this to make myself feel better, which is not bad. It's okay. I mean, you're helping the other soul, and everything. But um, yeah, I was actually doing this for self validation, self validating my own actions and feeling better about myself, and telling myself that, yeah, hey, I'm a good person. Um, and I just felt happy. And so basically, at some level, what I was doing, is I was trying to help myself even by helping others. So that is where the entire thing go. That is what I was trying to tell you in the beginning. That by helping oneself, you're actually helping others, and by helping the other people, you're also helping yourself. So let me just like give you one example, of helping oneself, which would help others. For example, you would have, often heard this example a lot, but then it's really, really relevant to this particular situation. When you're going in an airplane and the air hostesses say, if there is some kind of turbulence and then there are oxygen masks, you need to help yourself first before you help the other, even if the other person is your child or your spouse or whoever it is, right? Um, and and it is and it kind of translates into life as well, because see, when the airplane is going down, your brain is all fuzzy and you're in the self survival mode and everything. You're not thinking straight. You need that oxygen to even help you think straight. So you're, by not helping yourself and trying to help the other person, you're actually putting two lives at risk, yourself and the other person as well. But whereas if you're trying to help yourself and make yourself better first, then you're state of mind to actually help the other person. And the same thing translates to life as well, right? So when you're at a very vulnerable kind of state, whether it is your emotions, whether it is your financial situation, whatever it may be, and you're just trying to help other people, I don't know what you can give when you're not full yourself, when you're not full of love, and when you're not full of self appreciation yourself. Know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, I do. But I guess that's where this the question arises, because when you say you're not sure what you can give when you're not, because as human beings we seek validation, and we tend to find a strength when we feel that we're helping somebody else. We may not be doing that great of a job, but just the thought that we're doing something for somebody else and they might be benefiting from it just helps us and makes us feel stronger.
No, I think I do agree with you at a certain level that it is okay. I mean, if that is helping someone else is actually making yourself feel better and making yourself stronger, that is actually in a way helping yourself as well. And like you said, it actually goes hand in hand, and that is what you're supposed to do, because at the end of the day you're taking care of yourself, and if it is by helping someone else, then so be it, it's okay. But I think the primary thing is you need to help yourself. I think this is something that happens in most relationships also, right? And most of us focus on the other person in the relationship in the name of love, that we actually forget to love ourselves. And in the process, we want them to reciprocate the love, and when they're not able to do the same for us, we kind of resent ourselves. And just a small example, see, I think in some way, um, we teach people how to treat us by our own actions and attitude towards ourselves. So if we are putting out signs out there saying that, hey, we are ready to sacrifice ourselves for the to help others, I put myself before others and everything, we're kind of attracting the same kind of people who want to be rescued. But what about us? I mean, in the process of giving, are you not losing out?
Okay, I'm just going to take it to other speakers here. Right now, we have Padma and Sid. I don't know how much of that you've heard, but if you'd like to start with your opinions about the topic I've shared.
Yeah, so can I go next? Thank you so much for having me on this. Very valid question, I think, because I think there is this dichotomy that happens where you're trying to figure out whether you're being selfish or you have to be a giver. But I would say what has really driven me across my life, and especially now when I look at it, I think it's more about acknowledging that I don't know everything. And therefore, I think we are in it together. So let's go with the flow. Let's see what we need to do together, And I think that's what drives me, whether it's as a teacher or even in my corporate avatar. When I work with my team, it is that I can never know as much as all of us together. Right. So why don't we just, put our shoulders to the task and keep learning from each other, and we will evolve something much better at the end. So I might be the head of that company, or the head of that team, but it still doesn't matter. It still is that there is that acknowledgement that I do not know enough, and therefore we need to learn together, which I think drives me. I could compare this to Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits when he speaks about the maturity cycle. And he says that there is initially this bit of dependence, right? You're dependent on everybody else to be able to grow yourself. So as a child, you're looking out for somebody else to be able to give you that milk bottle, help you to stand or whatever, right? So for all your succulents, for your needs, everything, somebody else has to help you. Then you grow to this level of independence where you say, I'm going to do it on my own and I don't need anyone. And in fact, it's a kind of a rebellious attitude as a teenager, for instance. But as you grow older, and as you become a mother yourself, as you become, you look at your children around you, you realize that you need your parents just as much as they need you.
Mhm.
And I think that is the important factor, that we need each other. We cannot live in isolation. We cannot stay, in a cave and say, okay, I'm self-sufficient for myself for whatever I need. But I also agree with what Honey had stated, where she did say that, when you are giving, you will continue to keep attracting people who want, right? Because you are naturally there like one fountain of, whatever, do good or knowledge or whatever they see you as. I believe that they will be in that feeling of giving also, there is a lot of gain. And whether it's a gain for your soul or a gain actually, that you're getting blessings, or it is just the fact that you emotionally, you feel like you had said, Pallavi, that you feel a lot stronger because you're helping somebody else, so it puts you at a position of, let me say, one level higher than what you think they are at. So when you give, you generally give downwards, right? When you take, you're taking from somebody up. But I think that the true level is where you recognize that there is that symbiosis, there is that interdependence that has to come from each other, which really means that this is a mature relationship, wherever it is, whether it's personal or otherwise. I have also been in the same fact, I've definitely been in both other situations also. Like I have been a giver at a lot of times where I think I know it all. But at many a time, I'm, like for instance, with my children, I keep thinking that, all right, I know what they should be. I know where they should study. I know better. And sometimes it does come across as being high handed, but I put it down to perhaps because of my experience, I think I know better, but it isn't true because they have a different perspective from their point of view. And therefore, now after so many years, you sit back and you say, you know what? They actually know better because they are living in their today. I'm living in my yesterday. So am I really the right person to tell them what they should be doing or what? And therefore, can I really help them out in the way in which they need? And when I start taking from them now, when I take from even my grandchildren, for instance, it is a lot of learning that I'm having. It's not just abacus, but it is there's so much that I'm learning from them on a day-to-day basis, which helps me to see things from their point of view. So somewhere I think I thought I was elevating myself to the level that I would be giving them. But actually, it's not true. You bring yourselves down to earth, to the ground, and you actually recognize that you're gaining a lot from other people around you. And I think that's when the true missing other people really starts. And I think the pandemic has kind of brought that home. The fact that I haven't been able to travel to see my grandchildren over the last 2 years, which has never happened before. And, because generally I go in June, July, right? So it's been 2 years since it will be 2 years by the time I go next. So that's something which strikes me as saying that, so therefore there is so much of dependence that I have on them as well for my own happiness. And then, so that's one part. The other part I would also look at from the point of view of learning. And I think that as a teacher, when you continue to give, you are closing yourself up to the perspective of your students when they want to share their perspective of even a concept which may not be relevant to them any longer, but you are talking about it because you have learned it in a particular way. So I think to bring that, the relevance of everything that we are talking about, I think we need to definitely keep sharing with each other and growing together towards a new tomorrow. Because I think in one of the earlier sessions also we had spoken about this, where I said that we have no idea of the new normal. We don't even know whether we are already the new normal. So do we really know what tomorrow is? Neither do they know, the students know, nor can we even begin to foresee it. So together we have to move forward with my experience and their perspective of their reality should together give them a solution of what can work tomorrow. So I think there are ways. I don't think you can say definitely that there's only one point that drives you or one philosophy that drives you in every situation. I think we keep adapting and picking up whatever is relevant across the times, across the environment, across the people who are there around
Well, I do. I completely agree with you on so many points there, but I do still have a curiosity towards, as an HR professional, you've dealt with so many different um, characters, if I may use that word, of people. There are extremes in both ways. There are people who are fully balanced. So people who just believe that they're in it for themselves, and they might just harm another person by attempting to help them, still are able to move forward by doing so. And people accept it. They might have negativities initially, but they accept it, and then that negativity turns into inspiration because, oh my god, look, someone's gotten to where we could never have done. So what's happening there?
I think you have a point, and I think that's where most HR people should sit back and recognize that this could be something which is detrimental to the entire fabric of that particular company, right? I mean, you don't want that to get absorbed into the DNA, where people are doing this for the sake of recognition or for the sake of emotional reward or even financial reward or whatever. That you're helping out others and helping them probably in the wrong way. But I think that HR needs to sit back and say, like, are these people skilled enough to do the counseling? Are these people skilled enough to help the other? Do they know enough about the job to even be the project buddy for
Mhm.
for another person? And you have to keep taking stock of it, right? I agree with you, and I do agree that yes, sometimes when a person says, "Hey, I finished my work, can I come across and help you?" How much of that really is helpful and how much of that is detrimental is something that one needs to take stock of. It does happen.
Yeah.
And yes, sometimes people do look at it and say, yeah, look, this guy, he's so helpful and so on. But I don't think that that is the true way to go about it. You need to be able to look at people who have been trained and skilled to come across and help. It's not just the intent to help. And it could be also, by the way, it could be also that the person has absolutely good intent, want to help. But are they people who have the skills to be able to help is something that we need to make sure.
Okay, Sid, you've been here for a bit. You've heard the conversation so far. What do you think about all of this?
Firstly, good evening, everyone. Hi, Padam. I made it this time. Hi, honey. It's been such a long time. Uh, nice to be talking on this thing. Okay, so yeah, of whatever I heard and my perspective is what I'm going to be sharing because so according to me, I feel I would go with we are in this together, and the other two statements made is a part of we are in this together because they're all interdependent, right? You can't have just we are in this together without the other two,
Mhm.
right? So that's my take. And also going by Patan's view about this whole thing,
Mm.
right? Yeah, giving, taking, all of these, and they are interdependent. You can't give without having something to take. You can't be the giver all the time, right? You can't take without having some benefit for yourself somewhere, because even nature is like this, right? You can't always take from nature that everything it has to offer. If you do, you'll end up with all the vast amount of destruction that we have done. What have we given back? What have we ever given back? Nothing, right? Can anyone say anything about, or at least one thing about what we've given back? I personally, I don't think I've given back much. And as human beings, being a part of nature, I really feel that we should have some kind of responsibility to say that, okay, we've taken something and we should give back. Okay, how can we give back? Really, nature's not going to take anything from us. But the only way in which we can show a reciprocation is by leaving behind something for the people who are going to come, or the generation that's going to come, the future, right? So I think being we are in this together, and that's the approach that I mean, that's my view about this entire thing. And as far as giving and taking goes, very honestly, it's good to give. It feels great. It feels great to take as well, which again is a very nice position to be in. But yeah, if it's transactional and it has a result, okay, great. But you can't always just give. Neither can you just take and be the happy person all the time. So we being in this together, helping all of us equally to be a part of this community, to be a part of this earth, to be a part of nature. I think that's the way I would like to go about this entire thing.
Okay, I have a follow-up question for you. And because this is from, again, from people whom I've spoken with and comments that I've heard from people of our generation and possibly different generations as well, that men find it easier to go by, I help myself, and by doing so, I help others. It's just going, it's a chain reaction. It's going to work. I can't explain the emotionalities and the sensitivities of it, but it will work. So what's your understanding of that aspect of it?
Possible. You see, men and women understand situations, each other, occurrences in life differently, right? They can be a point which they can commonly agree on, and they could also be a point where everything can be commonly agreed on, but usually it doesn't happen that way, right? So now going by men saying that, okay, fine, I can help someone and I can help myself. Somebody will be helped by this. That's okay. See, they think that if they help somebody, they get something in return, right? Well, that's a very good thought process. But what if you don't get something in return? There's nothing to do about it, right? So what happens there? Then when you don't get something in return, your intent to help again shortens. You'd not want to do it. You don't want to help somebody again. So, but on the other hand, if you take women, right, they're okay with helping you once, and even if you don't do something for them, in return, they would definitely come back to consider and help you again. And if you still don't do anything to them in return, they'll still give you another chance. That's always been there. I think that's where they have a leverage over being women, and I respect women a lot because in plain terms, they're a little more considerate than men. As far as all the women I've come across in my life, yeah, I could say this.
So with the,
Can I just relate to what Siddharth had
yeah, I was
spoken?
just coming to you with that, yeah, that part of it.
Because I think that's a very important point. And while he's being extremely generous about the fact that, women are always considerate, I would not really agree, because it has also been known that it's the woman who says, I've done so much for you all your life. I have brought you up like this, even mothers, right? I brought you up like this, and this is how you're going to return the favor. So I also see a lot of the emotional blackmail that happens from women, right? But I would agree to the extent that yes, there is a sacrificing nature that seems to come from women, from, I would say, the feminine side of people. I wouldn't say women, because I've also seen this in a lot of men for whom that right side of the brain is more dominant, right, than the left side. So I would say that there are lots of people who would definitely look at giving and continuing to give without expecting anything in return. But that could also come from a space which is not necessarily just sacrifice. It could also be that I have so much and now I can give. So, I think one needs to weigh this helping and giving, etc., from the state that one is at currently, right? I see many men, for instance, when they have a lot of wealth, you look at the Azim Premjis, you look at Ratan Tatas of the world, even Ambani to an extent, right? If you look at all of them, they would be giving and giving very naturally as a part of corporate social responsibility, maybe, and also because they believe that is something which they can afford to do. But then you look at other people, like if you look at, like, for instance, Sudha Murthy, she's also got a lot, but she gives of her time more than just of money, more than just bringing up something. She just sits there, she's working with clothes, sorting it out, making things with her own hands. And I think that kind of giving is very different from the usual donation that one looks at, for instance, which is supposed to be philanthropic, but may not be. The other thing is, when you look at the common people, and you look at, the feminine as well as the masculinity of people, yes, there is this I'm not saying that they do it deliberately, but it happens because men are constantly on the search for achievement. They're constantly on the search for reward. They're constantly on the search for report, right? I mean, I'm talking of, when I say men, please don't mistake me. I'm also saying there are women who are actually more men than men, right?
Yeah.
So anyone with that masculine dominance in them would tend to be looking more for that report, that appreciation, that achievement factor, and so on. Whereas there are a lot of the women, I would say the feminine part of people, which would also accept that they can give because they have that natural bent of giving. So I wouldn't like to just gloss over it from the point of view of gender. I think it's more to do with the characteristics of people, which could be driven by the hemispherical lateralization. The other thing I wanted to also state here is when I look at the generations, and I believe people of my generation, not only because we are old and have reached that stage in life right now where we're not looking so much for ourselves, but looking to be able to help others. I think that it is also the fact that we belong to the baby boomers generation where we had to fight for our rights, and we know how difficult it is for others to be able to get that space. So when we look at the younger generation today, we also look at them and say, okay, there is so much that, and the competition has really increased much more today than it was for us. But at the same time, they have a lot of other stresses that are also affecting them. So I believe that it's also generational to an extent where, it drives a particular type of giving or sharing or taking. That's what I wanted to say.
Okay. And Honey, did you want to add something to that?
Not really. I mean, I do agree with all the points that Lekha Aunty just said, especially around, it's not just women or men. It's more like, your masculine personality or your feminine personality and which dominates in a particular person. I think that made more sense than, just women being all the givers and we being more compassionate, which I do not agree with at all.
See, and it's a very large scope actually, because everybody is helping someone else some way or the other. We cannot say that they are not helping or they are just stuck with themselves.
Okay.
And they are wanting to only help themselves and come up. No, it's not like that.
Mm-hmm.
According to me, they are helping themselves to grow in their own lives, and in the pathway, they will be helping other people in so many ways. It may not be publicized as some people do because they do it in a very large scale, so they get recognition. But when it comes to small things within their capacity or within their time limit, then each one of them, each one of us are actually doing something or the other, giving back to society or just helping the circle around them. It could be very small because in a population of 1.3 within or more in this whole world's population, I mean, we don't know much who's doing what.
Okay.
Right? We know a very small percentage of people who are doing. And so that recognition has to be applied to each and every human being. It's a very natural phenomenon. That's what I would like to say.
I'd like to add this in here. Do any of you believe that the law of attraction has much to do with these, the results of the paths that you choose?
Oh, yes.
Absolutely, Pallavi. In fact, that was what we had, I'd also stated earlier, and I think Honey had also mentioned this, that if you are doing something, it's automatic that people will come to receive, right? If you are a taker, you will always find that people are willing to give it to you. Now, how they approach you or what is the attitude that they have towards you could differ, right? I would also like to, probably contradict a little bit of what Suri had said, which is that I don't think that everybody is naturally a giver. I think that there are a lot of people who are naturally takers and are extremely self-centered for whatever other reasons. It could be also because of their circumstances, the environment, or bad experiences in the past, which they
Absolutely.
don't want to help others or whatever. So I don't think everybody is a natural giver. But and I also agree with your surmise earlier, Pallavi, where you stated that there are people who keep taking, and sometimes, unfortunately, they get recognized for the wrong reasons, right? I mean, they're so selfish and self-centered, but they still rise, and it may give a wrong kind of emulation to the others. The exemplar strategy that that they have for the others could be something which is completely faulty. But I also believe that this is probably something that is happening because the world around us has also become a lot more materialistic than it was maybe some time back. And again, I would go back to the generational bit. I think, people here are looking to be able to get more out of whatever resources they have. And how do they do that? By saving it for themselves rather than for others. I'll give you a small example here. When I look at the armed forces, of which I am an army brat, as you know. And I look at people of the kids of my generation, right? I mean, that is when we were kids at that time. It was very different, right? At that time, you used to be able to see a lot of people fraternizing. You'll have lots of social parties. You'll be going out. My parents would be begging for seats in schools and colleges, and probably getting it as well because of the army tag. And so there was a particular way of doing things. We never owned furniture as long as we were in the armed forces. We started building a house towards the end of my dad's retirement. We started buying stuff at that time. You always lived with MES furniture, MES houses. The car was hardly something we needed. So we had one old ambassador car for many, many years, which we hardly used to use because there were the army transport, either the 3-ton or the 1-ton into which we would jump in. In Bareilly, in fact, when my dad was commanding the ASC school, we had the buggy, the horse-drawn buggy that used to come to pick us up for school, complete with a footman. So very Cinderella-like we used to go in it. We never really needed to have our own cars or our own transport. But you look at it today, and you look at children today, and you go, to places like the RSI or whatever, and you find that it is completely a different milieu. Today there is not so much of that fraternization. There's not so much of that socialization. People don't drop in at each other's houses like we used to earlier. My parents tell me of the time when my mom tells me, for instance, the time that she was newly married, a young bride in Jammu. And suddenly on the second week over there, everybody in that entire station came to her and said, make us food. And I think she started making dosas, and she had to make 110 or something because the mixie was going on at one side. She was doing this at one side because people were so hungry, and they had no qualms about asking for it because it was really treated as one family. So give and take was a very natural way of living. But today, if you want to go and visit a senior officer, you will have to take an appointment. You'll have to make sure it is on time. You'll have to make sure that the wife is not working somewhere else and therefore has no other call on her time, and there is always that distance that is maintained. You are not going to go there and say, okay, I'm staying for dinner. You will come away. So things have changed in very many ways. Even if I look at the way in which when I started my career back in 1980, and I think back of the NTPC, which is the first company that I joined, and very sadly, of course, today you would have heard that the new plant has been damaged in, with the Chamoli glacier flooding in Uttarakhand as well. But anyway, so, when I joined NTPC, for instance, at that time, it was such a warm atmosphere. And the fact that we were so few women actually allowed it to become more of a family. It was very, very nice. But today, when I see the struggle that youngsters have when they join a new company, we have to make a special effort as HR. We reach out to them to help them to feel included, because it is not natural to the rest of the team to actually include them. So there is a difference in, I think, and I don't really put it only to culture. I don't only put it down to generation. I think it's the time. The fact that we have reached an era where people are trying to have got many alternatives for the way they spend their money or the way they conserve resources, for what end. It wasn't there earlier. We never had that kind of feeling. I remember my father telling me by the 20th of every month, we were dead broke. We had nothing to eat. We had nothing to, spend money on. But we used to go to the RSI. We used to have fun. The kids used to meet in the playground. We never had the kind of demands that children have now. But today you find that children want so much that both parents are working, and still both parents will take loans for the future for things that the children don't really need today, but which we're trying to gratify them because we want to assuage our guilt in some way. So I think we become very materialistic. We become a very consumerist society, which is good for the people who are in sales or motor vehicles or anything else, for instance, right? So I think like I was just saying, we were perfectly okay with just having one ambassador car. But today, if you want cars, a Jaguar is something which we should have in your garage, right? It's just something that needs to be there.
And I also do have a lot of army officers who got cars from me, and they don't want anything less. They don't want to travel in their ambassadors or neither
That's
in
what
their
I'm
gypsies.
saying. That times have changed. The army officers of today have a different status recognition, which we never had.
That is a great thing.
Which
That
is very
is a
good
great
for you.
thing. Absolutely good for me. Yeah, but yeah, I think change is something that we're going to live with, at least what we're going to have till we are alive, because everything is going to change. That's the way it is. Seasons change, the time changes, people around us change, thought processes change. So it's great. It's great, and I think the biggest power we have is the power of adaptation. That we can adapt to every kind of change, and that's our specialty. So helping, no helping, help yourself first, become good, then go to somebody else, help them, get them up on a level where they can help somebody else, and then you're all in it together. So yeah, that's how it works. It's a cycle. It keeps going on, and change is probably the driver of this cycle, right? So with different times, you have different needs, you have different requirements, and then you start helping yourself differently, and everything goes on according to the cycle. So yeah, it's pretty much interconnected, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you said, Siddharth, because I think that's right. We have a lot of change around us. We are in this constant movement, and it is important for us to be able to adapt. And sometimes you need to depend on everybody else to be able to help you to adapt, whether it's through you don't want to make the same mistakes that others have done. So learning from them, either from their stories or asking for their advice on where to go, is also a way of adaptation. I completely agree.
Honey, you were saying something?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with what Siddharth said about adaptation. We are constantly in the mode of toggling between helping yourself, helping, getting help from others, or, we're in this together. Let's just go with the flow, right? And I think this also stems from what exactly are you giving and getting in return? What is it? Are you giving advice? Are you giving emotional support? Are you giving financial support to somebody, or giving or receiving, basically? So what are you exactly helping with? That, I think, is the driver to where you're actually putting yourself in. Are you helping yourself first, or are we in this together, or are you just taking help from somebody else? I think that is what's going to drive you to decide how to toggle between these three topics.
Right. And well, coming to the end of our discussion, but I just wanted to know if you were to share one piece of advice or a suggestion to people who are struggling with their personal choices or prioritizing themselves in certain situations.
So I would say that, my advice to people would be that actually, even in this, just go with the flow. Sense it out as to what is really important at that time. Sometimes it's important to have the seatbelt syndrome, like Honey had spoken earlier, that you first strap yourself in before you can save somebody else. Put that oxygen mask on before you can help somebody else. I think it's important to be able to do that. But at the same time, you also need to keep uppermost in your mind about what the others around you need. And again, times could be different for that. Or sometimes you just learn to be symbiotic and depend on each other. So I don't think there is just one strategy that one needs to use. And I like the word that Honey had used, about toggling between each frame. And I think sometimes it could be also that you need to use all three types in one situation, but maybe first, second, and third, you keep choosing whatever is important. So I think it's critical for us to be able to realize that there is no one solution for the rest of your life. You will need to keep altering. You will need to keep looking at ways in which there is always the greater good, greater including yourself. Whatever is important, how do you get the best kind of return on that investment of time and effort for you? So that's what I wanted to say. I don't think there's one solution.
Okay.
I'm not in a position to actually advise anybody. I myself, I'm figuring out things as I go. So what I would say is, if you, if I were put in a situation where I have to help myself, but I'm thinking about what would the other people do, or how would they judge me, or how would they perceive me? Would they think I'm really selfish? The advice that I would give to myself at that time is, you can't always please everybody, but if you think you need to actually, strap on and just go and help yourself, I think that is the best you should do. That is what you should do.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I would like to add on here is, you are trying to help or you want to give advice. The big question here is, what is right? What is wrong? Because one man's nectar may be another man's poison, So each one has to think properly and have a proper insight about the other person to whom they are going to advise or give suggestions, because there is a lot of knowledge, some of it very biased, some of it very prejudiced. So the people who are hearing already have a set of thought processes. So we need to be extremely careful as to what we want to suggest and advise people, right? The thoughts and the deeds of ourselves and the other persons is very bound by a lot of norms and morals, which the society is bound with, right?
Yeah. Built
and we naturally abide by it, to say the least.
I agree with what Suryanti is saying about morals and ethics and everything, right? Because just to give you like a tiny example, most of our ethics and morals professors, they would have asked us, so there are two tracks, and there's a cart coming and you have the choice to save your loved one and a stranger. Who would you choose? So obviously over there you would be helping yourself by saving the person who's close to you, right? You would obviously choose your loved one. And sometimes you are harming the other.
What?
Yeah, so that.
I think I'll save the stranger. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I think.
I'm sure most of us have clear lifestyle choices. For the some who still battle themselves, I hope this discussion helps. Well, that's all for today. Next week we come back with a twist. Until then, stay safe and spread the love.